Good evening, y'all. How you been today? I was busy. I had my counseling and then had my mammogram done. They told me hopefully the doctor's office will have the results of the mammogram tomorrow, so maybe I won't have to stress out all weekend. So, fingers crossed. And then after I got home from all of that, I slowly was refreshing some of the homes of my tarantulas and got them all fed and watered. And so this is a little late happening tonight, but it's happening. So, last time I talked with y'all, it was about my jobs, but before that, it was about my first husband. So, we won't go back to that. When I met him, I was extremely spoiled and extremely naive. So, I wanted to be a wife, but I didn't know how to be a wife, really. I was kind of winging it and almost emulating what my mother did, which, to say the least, was not a good thing. After the accident with my husband on the motorcycle, things were intense. And then we had my son, and that was a lot more stressful as a family. I've said how my mom didn't really like me as I was growing up. And therefore, I didn't love myself. But because I was innocent and naive when I met my first husband, I thought everything was the way it should be. One night, I woke up and he was having sex with me. And I didn't know then that it was classified as rape. I wasn't conscious. I was asleep. I was not able to give consent. But he did it anyway. And it happened quite frequently over our years together. But I didn't know any better at the time. So I never said anything really to anybody. Because, my actions on other issues were just as fucked up. I went from being my daddy's girl, daddy's spoiled girl, who pretty much always got what she wanted, to being a wife and a stepmother. And my thoughts were, whatever I had to do to get my way, that was okay. Even though we both worked, anytime I did any kind of purchasing, that was not cheap, $20 to $50 was fine, but anything over that, I always checked with him first because I thought that was only right. And if he told me no, then I thought it was perfectly okay for me to tell him no, um, for what he wanted. Of course, sex. So until I got what I wanted, he was cut off. And I thought that was okay to do. But, um, after a few years of marriage, we had our son Chris, and things were getting more and more frustrating and more fighting at home. So we decided to go to couples therapy. And we went, and the first time we went, he did not like what the counselor was saying, not only to me, but to him, and he never went back. So what was supposed to be couples counseling turned into my own private counseling. And that's where I learned to deal with the issues with my mom. At that point, she still was not diagnosed. She was just had her manic and depressive episodes, and we didn't really know that's what it was called or, why it happened. We just knew it did. And my mom, she was a master manipulator. We would be talking and everything would be perfectly fine. And then out of the blue, she would come out and start saying things and reduce me to tears, and then go right back to acting like everything was okay. For an example, I was talking to my mom, and she had told me something, and I don't even know what it was, but in the course of talking with my brother and sister-in-law, I mentioned what mom had said. And I guess in a roundabout way, my mom found out I had said something to my brother and sister-in-law. Well, she called me, and we were just talking. And then out of the blue, she starts attacking me, saying that she can never trust me again and she'll never tell me anything because I'm just going to turn around and blab to everybody else about it. And, thanks for fucking everything up, basically. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm crying. And then as soon as she's done, boom, she is right back to being happy-go-lucky like nothing happened. And I'm just sitting there reeling from the attack and from just the shock of that coming out of the blue. And that was just typical for her, unfortunately. So my counseling, we dealt a lot with it. Now, I don't remember much of my childhood. I may have stated that before, but I have blocked it out. And during my therapy, we talked about a lot of it that I could remember, which wasn't much. And I had considered possibly doing hypnoregression to remember things. But after talking with the counselor, we agreed that it really would not help anything if I remembered it all. I remembered enough, and it hurt terribly to remember what I did. So therefore, adding the extra pain would cause more problems than it would heal. So we let it go. But over the years, I was in counseling with him. He was able to opened my eyes to the fact that, you know, yes, she can manipulate, but only if I allow her to. And I never understood until then that, it's not out of my power to let that happen. So after my son was born, it was his first birthday. And of course, we were having a birthday party. Invited my mom and dad to come. Dad was busy, so he couldn't, but mom did come. And, the woman could sew. She made my junior year prom dress, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, that woman, she could do damn near any craft there was to do, and it was always done beautifully. So when she came out, we asked her if she would bring her sewing machine, because I can't sew worth a damn, and my husband needed his military pants hemmed. So she brought it out, and during her stay there, he and I, of course, were fighting. And it had nothing to do with her. It was all about us. And my mom was sitting there working on sewing his hems. And, the fight ended and he had to go to work and left. And my mom immediately was like, well, I'm just going to leave because I'm causing you all to fight. And I don't want to be the cause of y'all fighting. And so I'm just going to leave and just, I don't want to stay here and cause trouble, was the whole gist of it. It's everything that was happening was revolving around her, which it wasn't. So I let her go off on her rant. I took about a 5-minute break from her. And then after I had cooled down a little bit, I looked at her and I said, Mom, him and I fighting has absolutely nothing to do with you. We have our own problems, and that's why we're fighting. And if you want to leave, you are more than welcome to. But you do not need to leave because we want you here. And all this fighting has nothing to do with you. So I put my foot down. And she ended up staying for the rest of her time. And from that moment on, we were able to have a much better relationship. We were able to finally connect as mother and daughter, but we were also able to connect as two adults. And I am absolutely grateful that we were able to work it out and have a better relationship for the rest of her life. And I was able to forgive her for my childhood. Looking back from what I know now, she was just never really equipped to be a mom, I don't think. I mean, every parent does the best they could, but she was less equipped than others to actually be a mom. But I know in my heart that, after the things she survived as a child, she really did do the best she could. And I can't fault her for that. That's all we can do, is do the best that we're able to. So, I really have, you know, I really enjoyed the fact that we could be mother and daughter finally, and that we could have a good relationship and not the toxic one that we were stuck in. And I'm thankful to have those almost 20 years that were good with her before she passed. And it wasn't easy by any stretch to have that confrontation with her. But I did it with a calm mind and calm words, and basically just laid out the facts for her and let her make up her own mind. Because, she's the one that controlled her actions. I could only control mine. And at the time, all I wanted to do was let her know that what was going on in my marriage was nothing to do with her. Even though she wanted it to be about her, it wasn't. So I'm grateful we got that opportunity. My husband and I, we were married for 4 years. I worked the entire time. I held down quite a few jobs, and I absolutely loved it, but, it never helped our problems, really. Whether he was out to sea, things were easier then because I didn't have on a daily basis the fighting. But when he was on shore duty, the fighting was just constantly. And then in 89, after my son was born, I got it into my head to apply to the Virginia Beach Police Department. And that fell through, so I was able to join the military police department. And it was working with military, but it was government employment. I was not under contract to stay for any certain amount of time. So in September of 90, I started my training. The fights between him and I were getting worse. And we had a fight one morning before him taking me to work. And a lot of people know what a nightstick is, but at the time we were using what was called a PR-24. You could not have one and use it unless you had the training and got certified to use it, because it could cause a lot more damage than a regular nightstick. The PR-24 is the baton that was used in the Rodney King beatings back in the early 90s. So during my training, I had been issued one, and I for some reason it ended up being at my house, and I had another one at work. Well, after that morning's fight, when he dropped me off to go to work, and then he was heading to his work, he looked at me and said, well, I've got the other PR-24 in the house, and when you come home, we're going to have it out to the bloody end. Uh, I took that as a threat because, to me, the bloody end means one doesn't survive. So, as soon as he left, I went in and I started talking to my superiors and let them know what was happening. And I made the decision to just not go home. So, a couple of my fellow officers escorted me to my house. I got the PR-24 and turned it in as I was supposed to. They hung around while I quickly packed a couple bags for me and Christopher. And I left and never went back. I checked into a hotel room for a night or two until I could find a place to stay. And that's what I did. We left most everything there. I took my necessities and the necessities for Chris, and I never looked back. We filed for divorce. And never once in any of the time before filing or, after our breakup, not once did I deny him visitation to Chris, because Christopher wanted to be with his dad, and he needed to be with his dad. And I was going to make sure that I would not impede that relationship. Unfortunately, after Tony and I split, he washed his hands of both of us, basically. He would see Christopher maybe once a month, and then it turned to every 2 months, and then it was a phone call, maybe a couple times a year. And Christopher grew up most of his life not talking to his father. And to this day, it bothers me because I worry about how that affected him as he was growing. He's never mentioned anything about it, really. But, when you get rejected by a parent, the trauma is there, whether you acknowledge it or not. And I don't know as if he's ever come to grips with it. I do know in the past 10 years or so, his dad has tried to increase contact, and I know on Chris's part, he hasn't really responded very positively about it. He does talk to him infrequently, but I don't get in between that because it has nothing to do with me. If they are going to have any relationship, they're the ones that have to work it out. And they don't need my intervention. So it was a struggle at the beginning of the time that Chris and I moved out, because his father wasn't paying child support at the time. And I was surviving on my income alone, which a lot of times wasn't enough to take care of rent and utilities and food and babysitting for him. I mean, we struggled month to month, but we made it. And we had a good life together. He and I were as close as could be. He was my young man from the time he was just an infant. He has always been older than his age. And I have always been so proud of him. He's smart as hell, good looking by anyone's standards. He is extremely good looking, and he's a great person. And I'm extremely proud of all he's done and accomplished in his life. Don't know where he gets the smarts, but I'm grateful for it. And I couldn't ask for anyone better than him. He is my hero. He is my life and my joy, along with my youngest son. And I thank the goddess every day that they are my babies. All right, well, I'm getting exhausted. It's been a long day. A lot of reminiscing, a lot of emotions. But I'm still here, and I'm still smiling. Maybe not a great big smile like most people, but I do smile, and I do laugh a lot. So that's all I can ask for. So if you have watched this, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love each and every one of you, and I wish you absolutely nothing but the best. Blessed be, and y'all have a great night. So a fond farewell. Love y'all, and good night.